The man who constructed the LA Kings talks about this past season and looks ahead to next season. We will hear from and discuss Kings GM Rob Blake and what he had to say in his exit interview with the media on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love for you to give us a positive comment on Apple Podcasts if you're a fan of the show. And we're also on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, 20 plus years at the Fox Sports Radio Network. I'm also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 16 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for 30 years. This episode of Locked On LA Kings, your team every day, brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. The LA Kings held their exit interviews on Monday, a day or two after the season came to an end. We heard from players, coaches, and general manager Rob Blake. We're going to do something a little bit different on this episode. We're going to hear directly from Rob Blake and what he had to say about this season and some of the things going into the future for the LA Kings. Now, you'll hear from Rob Blake because he's speaking into a microphone during the exit interview that was posted on the LA Kings YouTube account, but you won't be able to hear, for the most part, the questions that are asked from the reporters. So I am going to do my best to translate those questions so you won't be awkward and hearing, not being able to hear the questions. Then we'll hear from Rob Blake, and then we will pick and choose some of the things we want to talk about as far as what Rob Blake had to say. So here is the general manager of the Los Angeles Kings. His first question, and I'll identify the reporter if I can recognize his voice. The first question came from John Hoven from mayorsmanor.com and the Kings of the podcast. And he asked, what was the difference this year in the playoff series against the Edmonton Oilers as opposed to last year?
Special teams, I think. Obviously, penalty kill wasn't at the level needed to be against their elite power play, obviously, throughout the season. I thought our power play was good. Really effective there, so I thought that swayed it, and probably game 4 with a 3-0 lead after a period. You gotta find a way to close that out. That's the stage this team's at now, is finding ways to get through that to help lead you through it.
Like we talked about on Monday's show, the Kings were good, but not good enough. Next question comes from Eric Stevens of The Athletic. He asked about the Kings championship window.
I can tell the feeling amongst the players last night, and I wasn't around them as much this morning. It's different than last year in the fact that, they're in the playoffs and they got back to that level, but now the disappointment is now you got to find ways to win those series, and that's the you got to keep pushing forward. But that's the feeling I got from the players and the coaching staff last night and this morning.
Rob Blake talking about how maybe the players were a little bit more disappointed this time around. And I think it's something we really haven't talked about. Even though the Kings last year against the Oilers pushed them to 7 games, I think there's a tendency to think that because it only went 6 games this year, that maybe it was somehow a bit of a step back. I think that the Kings last season were surprised to get into the playoffs in a lot of ways. Maybe they were a little bit ahead of schedule, and pushing the Oilers to 7 games was, I don't want to say they were happy with it because that's not true, but there was a sense that, okay, we took a step. And now this year it was about taking another step. And again, even though this series only went 6 games and last year's went 7, if you remember last year's series, the Oilers in their wins, they blew out the Kings. The Kings in their wins, they had to scratch and claw and won close games. But the series on a whole, last year wasn't as competitive as the series this year. This year, the Kings were in every game except for game 5. All of the games were pretty much 1-goal games and could have gone either way. I said it on Monday's show. I thought the Oilers were the better team, and I thought the better team won. But the gap was closed, I thought, this year as opposed to last year. And that's why you heard Rob Blake say that the players were a bit more disappointed this time around, because the Kings are closer than they were a season ago. Again, but good, but not quite good enough. The next question was a follow-up from Eric Stevens. and he was asking about some key moves that have to be made over the summer to try and get this Kings team over the hump for next season, as opposed to where they were this year. Again, another first-round exit.
How you can augment
Yep.
the group in helping get to where you want to go.
Well, it's more shaping probably this summer. Growth of some more players getting into that mix that are pushing the leadership group. I'm not sure it's as easy just to go out and add like it has in the past summers because of the salary cap situation for the year, based off of where the cap ends up and different things. A lot of teams in that situation, but a competitive group, but we need to find a way to be better.
I thought the terminology there that Rob Blake used, talking about reshaping the team. He has made some major moves in the offseason to bring in some big-time players, whether it's via free agency or trade. We know about Victor Arvidsson and Philip Deneau a couple of years ago. Obviously, last year it was Kevin Fiala. And I think when he uses the term reshaping, what he's basically saying is we're not going to be able to make a big splash like that again this offseason. The hope is that we're able to maybe resign a guy like Vladislav Gavrikov, and that's certainly something he's going to be asked about later in this exit interview. But the translation to me is that because of the salary cap issues, the Kings are kind of pretty much where they are roster-wise, that maybe they can make some tweaks, and that maybe the biggest area where they can help reshape this team is to have some of the younger guys step up and perform a little bit better and take another step forward. The next question comes from an unknown reporter, asked about Quinton Byfield and if he's a winger or a center.
No. I think he took steps this year to become a prominent player on our team, where he wasn't last year in the playoffs, and so that's a step forward. I liked him at wing there. Ultimately, we still probably feel that he will be a centerman because he can do both. But his effectiveness with his length, turning pucks over, I thought when he joined that line with Kopitar and Kempe, it gave us some balance throughout the lineup. So that's a transition piece that whether it works or not. What we were excited is that he got into the lineup and became an effective player for us.
But he does need to be.
Quinton Byfield obviously is and will continue to be a bit of a polarizing player for the LA Kings. Certainly, we talked about it a lot on this show. But I know that there were some comments on some of the YouTube episodes, some of the emails saying that the Kings are fighting for advancing into the playoffs and maybe a dark horse for a Stanley Cup, bid this season. That there was no room for a player like a Quinton Byfield to basically be learning on the job at the NHL level. There were some people who thought he should have been in the AHL until he kind of proved himself more, maybe improved his scoring touch. And then when that happens, you bring him up to the NHL. I don't agree with that. The AHL is a good transitional league for some players, maybe coming from junior and then, taking another step before eventually coming into the NHL. I think a player like Quinton Byfield, and look, what they've invested in him as well, he's going to learn and he's going to take his steps playing at the NHL level. I get the points that some people have made about Quinton Byfield, but I thought that this year, the minutes that he had this year and the roles that he was playing big time minutes on the top line, that can only help him going forward in his development. Again, he got some big time minutes this year in some big situations. I know that people would have preferred that he contributed more. Certainly the numbers as far as goal scoring and things like that are not where a lot of people want it to be. And I get that. But again, I think this year was a big year for Quinton Byfield in his development. And we expect him to take another step forward next season. Rob Blake was asked if he's a winger or a center. I definitely think he's going to be at center. I could see him centering the third line next coming season. But again, I really think that this year was a positive step for Quinton Byfield, not as positive as it's going to be for some people, but as we all know, he's 20 years old. There's still time for Quinton Byfield. I am not ready to give up on him. Now, maybe he's never going to be the superstar that we all hoped he would be, being the second overall pick, but there is still time for him to be a very key contributor for the LA Kings now and in the future. Next question for Rob Blake was from John Hoban, and he talked about reshaping the roster and how important it was going to be to re-sign Vladislav Gavrikov coming up this offseason. We talked about it. It's going to be a challenge with the salary cap. Here's the question, though, for Rob Blake.
Cap-wise, most likely. Listen, I'd love to be able to bring that exact team that we had yesterday, full health, and run right through a whole season. I know it's not possible because of the cap situation and ultimately the amount of UFAs and signings and that. But he was we all understood the lefty ready and the balance. But when you can put 4 real strong defenders, in your group of 6, to be able to combat some of the star players in this league.
Obviously, they want Vladislav Gavrikov back, but I think, again, we're seeing the language and the way things are talked about that it's going to be a challenge. Basically, don't be surprised if they're not able to bring him back because of the salary cap issues and because he's probably going to be a player in demand. The one thing that I don't know if it concerned me, but I don't know about the comment he made there. Rob Blake was saying, alluding to the fact that he wishes he could bring this entire team back and kind of run it back next season. I don't know that is what I would be looking at. I think that, as he said, the team needs to be reshaped a little bit. There are not going to be major overhauls, partially because I think the Kings like the roster they have for the most part, but also because of the salary cap. They're not going to be able to make major changes. So I don't know about bringing this team back. If he could have his choice to just do it all over again, I think there does need to be some reshaping, as he said, and some tweaks to this team going forward to get a little bit better. We're going to have more with LA Kings general manager Rob Blake in just a second, but I want to remind you, today's episode of Locked on LA Kings, your team every day, brought to you by Gametime. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theaters near you. With the Gametime app, tickets are easy to find and buy for every kind of event in your area, and you get the lowest price guaranteed with event cancellation protection. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event, and the Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section or row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through your email. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, more with LA Kings general manager Rob Blake from his exit interview on Monday. And the next question was asked from an unidentified reporter. It was asked about the penalty kill issues for the LA Kings this year and looking to address that going forward. Is it a personnel issue or is it a system issue as far as improving the PK going forward for next season?
Personnel, it's more of a systems type issue.
I think it's a combination of both. I thought, early in the year, I think it was a trip there, Toronto, Ottawa, I forget. We ended in Boston, and our PK hadn't been doing a lot. They made some changes, subtle changes that improved it throughout the season, but it wasn't at that level in the playoffs. So, but again, that is an area of concern that we need to improve.
It's interesting. Last season, going into the season, we all knew that an area the Kings absolutely had to shore up was the power play, and how they shored up the power play. Yes, they added Kevin Fiala, and yes, Gabe Velarde certainly helped stepping up his game this season. But they went out and made an assistant coaching change. They brought in Jim Hiller from the New York Islanders, and he definitely had a huge impact on this year as far as making the Kings power play better. I wonder if maybe they would consider another tweak to the coaching staff. Trent Yanni is the man who runs the defense and who runs the penalty kill. And if there was somebody else out there who maybe could do a better job like Jim Hiller did with the power play, maybe they would consider bringing in somebody else to help out with the penalty kill. I know Trent Yanni has been with Todd McClellan for quite some time. He was with him in Edmonton and now obviously with him in LA. So I wouldn't anticipate that, but it's just kind of food for thought considering what the Kings did with the penalty kill and an assistant coach coming in. Eric Stevens asking about Gavrikov and his size and if the Kings need to be bigger going forward and trying to address that in the offseason.
I don't know. I thought overall defense and the way they defended, it was good. And if you look at the regular season and the defending numbers and analytics on defense, they're a top team structure-wise and everything. So yeah, those guys play hard on the back end.
So that's something that's been brought up a number of times on our show regarding the size of the Kings and them getting pushed around and not being a physical team. I think it's a bit overrated. I certainly would. Yes, you want to have as much size as possible if you can. But the way the league is trending, it's a league of speed and quickness and transition. And I don't think the Kings lost the series against the Oilers because they were out hit or out physical or that they were pushed around. So I think that might be a little bit overrated as far as the Kings needing more size. At least that's my read on it. The next question came from an unknown reporter. Was asking about the re-signing of Jonas Korpisalo and if that's a primary
we
issue.
Look at all these different options. We have, 3 UFAs, I think, Edler, Korpisalo, Gavrikov. Today, I can't answer that right now. Salary cap will play a big part in what we do there.
And asking follow-up about the importance of goaltending. Is that ranked higher than other positions or not?
Where do you rank goaltending, or how much of a priority or focus is it this offseason?
Same as all positions.
Another unknown reporter asking a question about Jonathan Quick. He basically was asking Rob Blake if the trade for Quick, did they have in mind trying to send Quick to a place where he could
for us, it was trying
play.
to improve a couple different needs that we identified throughout the regular season.
And the follow-up question was basically phrasing the first question a different way to see if he could get a different answer out of Rob Blake about Jonathan Quick going somewhere where he could play or not.
It was trying to improve two areas of need that we identified, and there's only certain ways you can do that throughout a season.
I think it was Eric Stevens of The Athletic asking a question about Jordan Spence and Brant Clark making an impact on the Kings roster next year.
Yeah. I mean, that's the hope every year that, a few young guys come in and command spots. Like I said, Byfield, Kapari probably come in and this year and commanded full-time spots throughout the playoffs that played important roles for us.
Okay, that was asked about some of the younger players coming in. This is specifically about Clark and Spence from Eric Stevens.
Well, Clark's
into the blue line mix.
Yeah, I mean, that has to play itself out. Clark will be the one player that will be pro for the whole season. That's the difference. I mean, Spence was here this year, got some time with us. Toby Bjornfoot, same type of thing. Clark would be the new defenseman coming in full time. Like, there's not the 9-game or 10-game issue or anything next year. He steps in and becomes a pro full time.
Obviously, we're all super excited about Brant Clark and his potential coming in next season. And I talked about the AHL being kind of a transitional league from junior into the NHL. But I think for a talent like Brant Clark, he does not need to go to the AHL to get some experience. What he showed last year skill-wise, to me, in the rookie camp, in the rookie tournament, in preseason, in his short time in the NHL, to me, he is an NHL-ready player right now. I expect him, barring any issues, any setbacks, which I certainly wouldn't anticipate, that Brant Clark is going to be on the NHL roster day one and is going to stay with the LA Kings in that spot for a very, very long time. Obviously, if there's any injury issues, he could have a conditioning assignment or something like that. But Brant Clark, to me, is NHL ready. I think we're all incredibly excited. If you're looking for one thing going into next year for us all to be super excited about, it is the potential of Brant Clark to come in and really make a difference on this LA Kings roster for next season. Next question was asked from Dennis Bernstein from Kings of the Podcast and NHL Network Radio about the contract status of head coach Todd McClellan.
Yeah, well, I'll sit with Todd and understand his desires and where we want to go. Very confident in that staff right now. I think they did a tremendous job, real good structure system in place, and they get the players to play hard.
I know that we've had some comments, and it's not surprising. Anytime a team comes up short, there are people that want to call for the heads of the head coach. Todd McClellan is going into his final year of his contract with the Kings. Certainly, Rob Blake addressing that a little bit as far as saying they're very satisfied with the coaching staff. That would probably kind of kill any thoughts that I threw out there about maybe an assistant coaching change with Trent Yanni. But for those people that are calling for the heads of Todd McClellan, it's not going to happen. He's going to be back next year, and I would not be surprised if sometime next season that they would sign him to a contract extension, probably a 3-year kind of a standard deal. The Kings, again, had a great regular season. They're in the playoffs 2 years in a row. I know we want progress, but I think Rob Blake and the Kings organization feel that Todd McClellan is the guy to lead this team going forward. Whether he is the guy to ultimately get them to the promised land or not, obviously remains to be seen. John Hoven with a follow-up question on Brant Clark, asking him if he'll be with the LA Kings roster
He's
next
eligible
season.
for both. right? But I think the way he played those 9 games, it was a difficult decision at that time. He went down and did everything possible asked from him in the OHL and throughout the playoffs. So I expect him to compete for a spot and help this team.
And an unknown reporter, I believe, asking about the injury issues with the Kings, with Lizotte and Velarde and Fiala, and what the issues were as far as the injuries go.
Potentially, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it can only carry 23 players, so however that works out.
Okay, the injury question now is coming up right here about.
No, I think you guys probably talked to the 2 guys that missed time. Well, I guess there's 3 players during the playoffs. Gabe Velarde came back. Obviously, that was related to that hitting the boards or at the end of the year. Kevin Fiala with the lower body with a knee injury from the hit in Colorado was able to come back in that series. And Blake Lizotte had a back, I guess it was spasms or back issue, but obviously came back yesterday. So yesterday was a full health bid on the team.
Can you say what Gabe's issue was?
It was upper body when he hit the boards.
No, but you don't want to get any specific.
I don't. Did he answer it? At all? I don't know.
You can show that.
Upper body. Okay, so I'm not going to be able to tell you.
So still secretive about the injuries, even once the season is over, as is usually the case in the NHL. And there's some privacy issues as well, as far as if players don't reveal what their injury issues were. Sometimes other players don't, or other people don't want to reveal that as well. We're going to have more comments from LA Kings general manager Rob Blake and discuss some of the things he had to say in his exit interview in a moment. But I also want to remind you, today's episode of Locked on LA Kings brought to you by Athletic Greens. With one delicious scoop of AG1, you are absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. AG1 contains less than 1 gram of sugar, costs you less than $3 a day, and is just 1 scoop in a cup of water. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. And to make it even easier, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL network. That's athleticgreens.com/NHL network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. We have more with LA Kings general manager Rob Blake, and he was asked by LA Times Hall of Fame writer Helene Elliott about the veterans on the team, Andre Kopitar and Drew Doughty, and how much they have left in the tank going forward to help this team into the future.
They keep showing it, yeah. And I just looked through the top of that lineup. I mean, Adrian Kempe was a force all year again, and I thought Kopi led the way he's always led with us. Drew had, a year ago with Drew was health. That's the first time he's really missed games at all with us. I thought he came back and established himself real solid in that lineup to help us. So those guys are big contributors on this team.
Dennis Bernstein asking about re-signing Gabe Velarde to a long-term extension. He's a restricted free agent.
The CBA kind of, different types of options with Gabe because of his age, and that we need Gabe to be able to play full seasons. I think you're starting to see a little bit of his potential, which is real good. He was committed this year, not on the offensive side, but on both sides. But I do think the power play really changed. Kevin Fiala and Gabe in that aspect, and then the 2 power plays competing early in this season. But Gabe was a big part of that.
I think interesting that Rob Blake mentioned right off the bat that they need to see him play for a full season. Translation to me is maybe he gets some sort of a bridge deal as a restricted free agent. They need to see maybe another season from him before they go all in on signing Gabe Velarde to a big deal going forward. Next question we had was, I believe, about Cal Petersen and his future.
We got to get Cal to be an NHL goalie. That's why we signed him to it. It was a tough start to the season and situation, and he was real good about going down and playing games, but that's a big summer for him to come back and compete.
Very interesting comments about Cal Petersen. I think Rob Blake has done a tremendous job as general manager of the Kings, whether it's been in the drafting of players, signing free agents, making trades, trade deadline as well this past year. But the one stain on his resume right now is Cal Petersen, that he and the Kings organization decided to pay him like he was a number 1 goalie when he had never proven to be a number one goalie and has yet to prove that he can be that type of a player. So Rob Blake's saying their intention on Cal Petersen is to bring him back next year. Hopefully he can hit the reset button and turn into what the Kings think that he can be. I am very skeptical that Cal Petersen will ever turn into a number one goalie, and he's being paid like that. So that's an issue. That's an issue going forward. We'll see if he can do something he's never shown before. I think it's a lot of wishful thinking. I'm not a believer in Cal Petersen, but again, judging by what Rob Blake had to say in his comments, they are looking to bring Cal back next year in training camp, give him a shot and see what he can do. Eric Stevens had the next question, talking about clearing out salary cap space to make moves this
Rob,
offseason.
might there be a need to clear out some salary or clear out some space in order to do the moves that you want to do?
Well, I do think, at the end of the day, when the cap numbers come in, like I said, we'd love to bring that whole team completely back, but I'm not sure that's going to be able to be accomplished with the cap situation.
Following question, Kobe said
Next question from Dennis Bernstein about Anze Kopitar getting a contract extension and basically retiring as an LA
If
King.
that's what he wants, yes, for sure. He's a tremendous leader for this organization, but he's playing at such a high level. Like, I mean, did he lead our team again in points? It was 17, 8 years. So yeah, he's been terrific.
And yeah, Anze Kopitar is going to be a free agent after this next season. He made some comments in his exit interview that he wants to retire as an LA King. And basically Rob Blake saying, if that's what he wants, then that's what we're going to do. And as he said, Anze Kopitar is still a very productive player. So Kopitar will have a no trade clause, something that Jonathan Quick didn't have. So expect to see Anze Kopitar, and this is not breaking news, but Anze Kopitar is going to retire as a Los Angeles King. The next question was about the Edmonton Oilers, something we talked about on Monday's show for you everydayers, about making roster moves specifically to compete with the Oilers. Do you try and do that or not, or just improve the team overall and in the end hope they're better than Edmonton and can get past them because the Oilers are still going to be there going forward?
Listen, you're right. They're probably not going anywhere with some of those players they have right now. But I don't think you make moves to beat just them. You make moves to get better.
John Hoven asking about the pressure on Rob Blake this season to continue to help the team get better, to supplement the roster, knowing the salary cap issues.
Go and add a real important player with salary. That part we know. The good thing is the team's pretty good, and there's not a lot of holes that need to be addressed. We do need some growth in some young players, but we do have to get better. Now it's not, you're not just happy to get in or have a good regular season. Now you got to try to win.
And again, we all know the Kings have to be better. We certainly have talked about that, but just the comments from Rob Blake, I think, is not surprising that they're looking for the improvement to come from within, whether that's the current players on the roster playing better or the younger players taking a step forward, that there aren't going to be any kind of major additions this offseason. That's kind of the tone of what the Kings are going through at this point. Not a surprise. You've gotten to a certain point. The roster is pretty much set, and now it's kind of about growing and supplementing that roster. The next question came from an unnamed reporter. Wanted to talk about Adrian Kempe this season and Kevin Fiala and their contributions to the team this year.
No, I think it was what we Kevin has a game break ability in his game. I thought the power play too. Wherever we get used in the lineup or how Todd uses the lineup can give you some matchup options there. But I thought Kempe built off of last year and commanded a presence on the ice that continued throughout the playoffs, both physically and wanting to be a guy to score. He's a major part of that leadership group now.
And we had an unknown reporter asking about Alex Turcotte for next season, what he'd like to see from him.
Health. That'd be great.
Dennis Bernstein asking, if you can't re-sign Vladislav Gavrikov, aren't the Kings back in the same place they were a year ago with that hole on the left side? And how do you solve that problem? Is it something internally, or do you have to go out and solve it?
Well, our market gets difficult just because there's a lot of unknowns in competing. You can target a player and think, okay, I'm going to get him, but there's probably 4 or 5 other teams doing the same thing. So The good thing is we got to see Gavrikov here, and we saw and understood what kind of fit it was. And like I said, when you can throw out defenders like that against top players, it certainly helps your team.
Jim Fox asking Rob Blake about Jim Hiller and the improvement on the power play this season.
Yeah, well, when I talk about that power play, sorry, I should probably mention that, right? Gabe and Kevin, the two units competing against each other. I thought RV did a real good job there at net front on different units, but Jimmy does a lot of behind scenes with that power play, and a different look from an outside organization, but was able to put some of these players in positions to change a lot. Power plays have changed a lot over the years. You see a lot of stuff through the box now and through the crease and that, and but I thought our power play was effective in the and there's a combination of a lot of those factors. Yes.
Just to clear
And one final follow-up question on Alex Turcotte.
That's just the whole
I'll start with that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And just hoping that he can have a full season of health, and then they will take it from there. So there you have it. There was the comments from Rob Blake, Los Angeles Kings general manager, in his exit interview with the media, talking about this past season and things going forward. I don't know that there was anything real earth-shattering there, but again, don't look for a lot of major moves in the offseason for the LA Kings as far as going out and trying to sign some big-name free agents. They just don't have that kind of flexibility with the salary cap issues. I think if you read between the lines with his comments, the re-signing of Vladislav Gavrikov is going to be difficult. They hope to do it, but it's going to be difficult. And I think he talked about reshaping the team. I think they're looking at some minor tweaks, but maybe, again, players on the current roster taking a step forward, the younger players coming in and contributing more next season. And we talked about Brant Clark coming in and being an impact player. I think that's one big, obvious addition this offseason that we're all going to be looking forward to. But again, I think Rob Blake overall is pretty happy with where the team is at this point. Whether you are as an LA Kings fan is certainly up for debate. And that brings us to what our next topic is to talk about. And that's what's coming up on this show for you everydayers who listen and watch every week. Coming up on tomorrow's show, Wednesday show, we have our weekly Kings fan feedback show. I want to get your comments on anything Rob Blake had to say in that exit interview, your thoughts on this season, your thought about the series against the Oilers, your thoughts on the season to come, whatever's on your mind. Again, Wednesday show, Kings fan feedback show. Get your emails in now. LockedOnEddie@gmail.com, EDDIE, LockedOnEddie@gmail.com is the email address. You can also post your comments below in the YouTube episodes if you are watching on the YouTube channel. On Thursday's show, I think we're going to look at what are the positives from the Kings this season that they can build on going forward as they reshape that roster. And then Friday, looking to have a special guest come in to join us to talk about the Kings season as well, get somebody else's voice in here on what they thought about the LA Kings this season. Of course, always invite you to keep in contact with the show while we're not putting out episodes. Stay interactive with us on social media. We are on Twitter at Locked On LA Kings and Instagram at Locked On LA Kings. I hope you enjoyed this special look at and listen to what Rob Blake had to say. It's something we've never tried before. If you like it, maybe it's something we will try going forward as well. My name is Eddie Garcia. Thank you, as always, for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow. And as always, go Kings, go.